10 years old. 10-year-old girl was raped. And she got pregnant. Ohio's trigger ban went into effect. And so she went to Indiana to get an abortion. 10 years old. I'm going to show you a clip in a bit from Michelle Goodwin. Definitely go look up the book or buy the book, Policing the Womb, Invisible Women and the Criminalization of Motherhood. It definitely speaks to a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. So I don't know if y'all know, but half the country, half the states in the country, I should say, will enforce anti-abortion laws aimed at forcing people with uteruses to carry to full term, even under the conditions of stillbirth, miscarriages, rape, incest, or any other ailment or difficulty that comes at the risk of the parent carrying the fetus. Even if the mother will die without an abortion, that person carrying is forced to die under law. Even if they're raped or anything else. A person with a uterus could be killed legally via rape or incest and or incest, and being forced to carry to term and die via miscarriage, stillbirth, or any kind of complications that come with pregnancy soon in half the country by the end of the summer. I don't think people get how many people will die, especially people of color. White people will die too, but they can largely afford to find a way versus people of color. Just some food for thought. But my point is, besides all the other reasons that this is crazy, one is that it's mass murder and genocide of Black, brown, and indigenous people across America. Christians that claim to be pro-life and Democrats in Pennsylvania. What will you do when Black and brown women start dying via forced pregnancy and when the elections are lost to Democrats and we get a Republican governor and healthcare for people with uteruses is illegal? Will you help? What is your plan is my question more specifically. Honestly, and this question goes for any other states currently caught in a limbo and clearly not safe from this scenario playing out. Clearly, this doesn't pertain to everyone. So, yes, this affects us all. Yes, I see many different people of all races and kinds at rallies. Yes, this affects women of color. a lot. However, women of color have always suffered the most and are always disproportionately affected and have been. We continue to lose Black mothers at alarming rates.
DemocracyNow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Today we spend the hour on the Supreme Court's long-anticipated ruling Friday that overturned Roe v. Wade, the landmark decision that established the constitutional right to abortion some 50 years ago. The conservative court ruled 6-3 Friday to uphold a Republican-backed Mississippi law that bans abortion after 15 weeks of pregnancy, while voting 5-4 to overturn Roe completely. Conservative Chief Justice John Roberts supported upholding the Mississippi law, but not overturning Roe. 9 states have already banned abortion since Friday. 17 more states are promising to do so soon. In his majority opinion, Justice Samuel Alito wrote, quote, "It's time to heed the Constitution and return the issue of abortion to the people's elected representatives." In their dissent, the court's 3 liberal justices wrote, quote, "With sorrow for this court, but more for the many millions of American women in 1992, which upheld Roe." She's the co-author of the book Controlling Women, What We Must Do Now to Save Reproductive Freedom. Also with us is Michelle Goodwin, Chancellor's Professor at the University of California, Irvine School of Law, host of the Ms. Magazine podcast On the Issues with Michelle Goodwin, and author of Policing the Womb, Invisible Women and the Criminalization of Motherhood. She just has a piece out in the New York Times headline, "No Justice Alito. Reproductive justice is in the Constitution." We welcome you both back to Democracy Now! Professor Goodwin, let's begin with you. Can you talk about your response to the Supreme Court overturning Roe after almost 50 years?
Well, it's good to be back with you, Amy, on the show. The decision itself, just as we saw with the leaked draft, has many errors, omissions. It has a selective, if not opportunistic, reading of American history. It does not center in all of its claimed originalism and all of its claimed textualism. Interestingly enough, it avoids the 13th Amendment. It even avoids the first sentence of the 14th Amendment. And here's what my New York Times piece was about. It was that when Congress abolished, through the ratification of the 13th Amendment, abolished slavery and involuntary servitude, they were not abolishing that just for Black men. They very well understood that involuntary servitude for Black women in the United States meant involuntary sexual assault, rapes, and then the reproduction after that, as Black women were forced to labor, not only in the fields, but also labor under the weight, a different kind of shackling of slavery, which was sexual subordination and reproduction. This was very well known. The abolitionist in Congress who led the way for the 13th Amendment spoke and wrote about this. Massachusetts Senator Charles Sumner was nearly beaten to death in the halls of Congress 2 days after giving a speech about the raping of Black women. Sojourner Truth spoke to it. I mean, it was clear, the New York Times, there were articles about it. So the very idea that there was no, when thinking about involuntary servitude as being consistent with involuntary reproduction, is just absurdist. It was written about everywhere. Everyone knew this as being one of the devastating effects of American slavery, and it was abolished with the 13th Amendment. And then later on with the 14th Amendment, it was still recognized that Black women were psychologically, physically, and reproductively still being harmed in southern states. Their children were being denied citizenship. Their children were being snatched and taken away from them. And the 14th Amendment was therefore then ratified. The piece goes into depth in all of these categories to give an education to the Supreme Court and to our country to remember this, because otherwise Black women have been essentially erased from the Constitution. And by erasing Black women from the Constitution, we ultimately erase all women from the Constitution, because the 13th Amendment and 14th Amendment not only freed Black women from these bondages, but it also freed white women from these bondages. None of this is given any kind of reading by the originalist and textualist on the Supreme Court, who seem to ignore all of that and have now rendered us to a country where there are free states where individuals can be free in their bodies, and also those where it is non-free. And one can't help but understand this as being so consistent with the patterns of slavery and Jim Crow in the United States.
And let's talk about the trajectory right through to now. People of color are most affected by the lack of health care that will be available when abortion is outlawed in state after state. Can you talk about the Duke study about Black maternal mortality and how much higher it is than for white people who are pregnant?
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because what is also alarming in this opinion and also in the draft opinion is how it gives no regard to facts, concurrent facts. The United States ranks 55th in the world in terms of maternal mortality. It is not in league with Germany, France, its peer nations. Instead, it's in
statue of a doctor named James Marion Sims, whose brilliant achievement carried the fame of American surgery throughout the entire world. He's the guy who created the vaginal speculum, an instrument gynecologists use for examination. He pioneered the surgical repair for fistula, a complication from childbirth, and became known as the father of modern gynecology. But that brilliant achievement was the result of a series of excruciating experimental surgeries that he conducted on enslaved women. In a lot of ways, Sims epitomizes the story of American medicine for Black women. It's a system that's failing them to this day. From infant mortality to life expectancy, the racial disparities in healthcare are staggering. The gulf between Black and white might be widest when we look at maternal mortality, with Black women 3 to 4 times more likely to die in connection with pregnancy or birth than white women. And that divide can be traced back to doctors like Sims, who contributed to a long, largely overlooked history of institutional racism in medicine.
Trying to understand a historical problem without knowing its history is like trying to treat a patient without eliciting a thorough medical history. You're doomed to failure.
That's Harriet Washington, a medical ethicist and author who chronicled the intersection of race and medicine in her book, Medical Apartheid. While many of the stark racial disparities in healthcare can be attributed to environmental and economic factors like access to good healthcare, studies show that minority patients tend to receive a lower quality of care than non-minorities, even when they have the same types of health insurance or the same ability to pay for care.
As African Americans, we've been abused for so long, consistently by the system. Why should we trust it? Why should we go to it when ill? And that's iatrophobia. That's a fear of the healer, inculcated by the behavior of those healers, unfortunately.
It starts with slavery. Doctors relied on slave owners for financial stability. They accompanied plantation masters to auctions to verify the fitness of slaves and were called in to treat sick slaves to protect their owners' investments. In 1807, Congress abolished the importation of slaves and in turn pushed Black women to have more children, to essentially breed slaves. Founding Father Thomas Jefferson later wrote, "I consider a woman who brings a child every 2 years as more profitable than the best man on the farm." Around the 1830s, the abolitionist movement led to the rise of what was called Negro medicine, or efforts to identify Black inferiority to justify slavery. And there were polygenists who tried to use both science and the Bible to find proof that races evolved from different origins. The 1830s also marked the beginning of recorded experimentation on Black women's bodies. One doctor performed experimental C-sections on slaves. Another one perfected the dangerous ovariotomy, or removal of an ovary by testing the procedure on slave women. In fact, half the original articles in the 1836 Southern Medical and Surgical Journal dealt with experiments on Black people. And then, of course, there was James Marion Sims, whose reputation is etched in history and on that statue in Central Park. Between 1845 and 1849, Sims began performing experimental surgeries on a 17-year-old slave named Anarcha. He eventually performed 30 operations on Anarcha and more surgeries on about 11 other female slaves. When his male colleagues could no longer bear to assist him in inflicting pain on the women, the slaves took turns restraining one another. Yet paintings depicting Sims, Anarcha, and other slave women presented a subdued version of his experiments. Even though anesthesia was introduced in 1846, Sims chose not to use it for his experimentation with slaves. His practices echoed one of the most prevalent and dangerous beliefs in medicine at the time, that Black people did not feel pain or anxiety. This book from 1851, titled The Natural History of Human Species, claimed the American dark races bear with indifference tortures insupportable to a white man. Studies released as recently as last year demonstrate that Black people are less likely to be treated for pain, particularly in the ER. There's even one from a children's hospital that found the same to be true for kids. And just this year, Pearson Education, a leading educational publisher, issued an apology and recalled nursing textbooks that included racist stereotypes, like this section that said Black people often report higher pain intensity than other cultures.
But what does it mean when you say that someone doesn't feel pain? Among other things, you're speaking about their humanity. These are all part of that suite of beliefs emanating from the 19th century that we still have not shaken off. Despite all our knowledge and sophistication, they're deeply ingrained.
Doctors like Sims might fit the Dr. Frankenstein stereotype, but they weren't outliers. Historically, Southern doctors who used Black bodies for troubling experiments were the norm.
It's a very common question. How can we judge our forebears? You know, those guys in the 18th century who practiced medicine in a way that appalls us today. And we think, how could you do that? I did not judge the practitioners based on our own ethics. I judged them based on the ethics of their time. It was not acceptable back then. We just did not hear from the people who protested against it.
After the Civil War ended, the 1900s brought a wave of immigrants to the U.S. It sparked a race panic and coincided with the birth of the American eugenics movement. One of the movement's key objectives was to reduce the childbearing potential of the poor and disabled. Leaders included birth control pioneer and Planned Parenthood founder Margaret Sanger, who eventually devised the controversial Negro Project, or family planning centers that pushed birth control in the Black South. It was a project that even garnered support from W.E.B. Du Bois, a founder of the NAACP, who wrote that Black people bred carelessly and disastrously. By the mid-1930s, more than half the states passed pro-sterilization laws, and often sterilization was forced. In 1961, future civil rights leader Fannie Lou Hamer went to the hospital to have a tumor removed, but was subjected to a hysterectomy without consent. The procedure, which rendered women infertile without their knowledge, was so common in the South that Hamer is said to have dubbed it the Mississippi appendectomy.
African American babies were no longer economically valuable. And African Americans themselves had gone from being a resource to a nuisance.
In June of 1973, the SPLC uncovered 100 to 150,000 cases of women who had been sterilized with federal funds in Alabama. Half the women were Black. In recent decades, women of color continue to be exposed to dubious reproductive health programs. In December 1990, the FDA approved a contraceptive called Norplant, and it was selectively marketed to Black teenagers in Baltimore schools.
You know, one of the current birth control methods now in the United States is Norplant.
Norplant fans like David Duke, the former KKK Grand Wizard, even introduced legislation to give women on welfare an annual reward of $100 if they agreed to get Norplant.
And it's time we start to encourage welfare mothers to be responsible.
That bill never passed, but the implant ignited a debate on whether long-term contraception, like Norplant that lasted 5 years, could be used as a form of social engineering when pushed to specific communities. Today, as we continue to lose Black mothers at alarming rates, a deeper look at the past may be a good step towards creating a more equitable healthcare system. Hi guys, thanks for watching. Of course, there's a lot more to the history of how the U.S. medical system has mistreated people.
For many, it's a matter of life or death. CBS's Drika Duncan reports that some members of Congress are trying to address the problem.
This is your favorite one.
This is my favorite. Yeah.
We first met 38-year-old Denisha Bowen in Union, New Jersey, just 1 week before she was due to give birth to her third child. Bowen delivered her first 2 children in hospitals, and both times she said she felt neglected.
I remember at one point I started crawling. I was still in the hallway because I was crawling.
You were crawling in a hospital
Yeah, because
hallway
I was in so much
after your
pain.
water broke.
Mm-hmm.
OBGYN and mother of 3, Dr. Nicola Pemberton runs the birth center of New Jersey.
I would say a lot of patients who come to my practice come with the narrative of, I don't want to die. That's why I'm here.
The United States has the highest maternal mortality rate for a developed country. About 700 women died during childbirth or soon after every year, according to the CDC. And Black women are at least 3 times more likely to die from a pregnancy-related cause than white women.
Yeah, it's a multitude of reasons, and it's a horrible statistic.
Errol Pierre is the Senior Vice President of New York State Programs at Health First, a not-for-profit health insurer. Is it true that chances of surviving are higher
Absolutely.
if I have a doctor that looks like me?
Yeah, a study in Florida showed this, that Black children had higher birth rates and higher survival rates when there were Black doctors delivering the baby.
Right.
So I'm going to stop that right there because I want to get into some other things. I don't want to spend too much time giving y'all clips, but I want to paint a bigger picture here because now that white women will be directly affected when most abortions come from white women these days, as far as like population goes, now white women want to be upset. Now y'all want to raise hell. Why wasn't y'all raising hell before? Over, I don't know, anything? Many of y'all voted for Trump. Let's not forget. I see many Black women upset too. Like, we all have a reason and right to be upset over this. And white women should be upset. Y'all should raise hell. Y'all helped create this mess. Silence is violence. But I also see many women of color saying, the hell with y'all. It's y'all fight. And I get that too. I do. Just keeping this all in mind. Because racism is everywhere. And Black people and people of color, keep all this shit in mind. Just saying. Me personally, I'm going to continue to fight and raise hell all over. Especially when it comes to the Supreme Court. It must be abolished. This affects us all. Just making note. I see a lot of Black women furious, but I don't see them out in the streets with y'all. I'm just making note. However, this webisode is more about BIPOC women, more specifically Black women, the disparities, the stereotypes, myths, statistics, and whatnot. Joining me is Tasliym, first of 7, back on the Leon block to give her truth and give y'all some knowledge. Thank you for joining us, fam. Appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. We're gonna have some chats amongst some videos and articles that I just posted. We'll get into it, and I want to see how much we can squeeze into like a half hour. I know you got some stuff you want to talk about specifically, and I want to leave pretty much the rest of this up to you. So I know we were just talking about the what was it? It's basically, was it medication? Was it a pill? Then was this the 90s that Nora plant was given out?
Yes, absolutely.
You there?
Yes, and okay. As you saw in there, it was directly marketed to urban communities, and I know specifically for women that passed away from that method of birth control, one being a family member. And I heard what you said earlier about this not being a Black woman's fight. And when this all first happened, one of the things that I posted on my Facebook page was something to that effect. Like, this is what happens when people enjoy a certain type of privilege.
Yes.
And so you sit back and you don't speak when others are being disenfranchised because
Yes.
you're comfortable with your privilege until it comes knocking on your door
Talk about
and
it.
bites you in the ass, proverbially. Um,
Mhm.
then you're not. Then you have a problem with it. My issue with this whole thing is this don't have nothing to do with our babies because nobody gives a fuck about our babies. Realistically, nobody cares if we carry these children full term. No one cares if we deliver them safely. No one cares. You know, it's not about our children. Um, as a Black woman, I didn't even know that Black women got abortions. So until I turned like 20, right? I just thought that because it was so many of us, it was just a known that you keep your children, right? Like either you keep the children, they go stay with your grandmother because you can't raise them, or you somebody you raising your sister as your niece or something like that. But I was very surprised to learn that Black women had abortions at the rate that they were having them. However, I don't trust numbers when it comes to things like this because I know that Black women keep their children. I know they have abortions too, but I know they keep their children. But when you look at records, you know, when you have certain insurances, and tell me when you need to break in, when you have certain insurances and things, you know, you have to take record of it. If you are on state insurance, of course, if you go in to have an abortion, it's going to be noted because the state now has a record of it, right? If you have a private insurance or you have enough money to just go pay a doctor or pay a doctor to come to your house, or you know, send your daughter off to a convent. Is that what it's called? A convent, Montessori. What is it called when they send it?
Convent?
Yeah, a
Or
convent, and then they come back 10 months later. Oh, they were just away visiting Aunt Susie or wherever Aunt Susie live at. The baby been taken. So when you have those advantages of being able to get rid of or birth the child with no record of birthing the child, of course there's not going to be a record of it. So I don't take it. I take it with a very
grain of salt.
grain of salt that Black women are having more abortions. I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all. I feel like Black women don't have the money to not be on record as much as other people, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
For everyone that's saying, "Oh, we're going to be forced to, you know, carry these children that are the result of rape and incest." Yeah, I don't think that's right. But I also know that you sat and let Black women sit in your households and nurse your children while they were pregnant by your husband. You know that they didn't consent to that sex. I know that you allow Black women to be in your homes and take care of your children while pregnant with their children and send their children out to the field the moment you got a little bit jealous because you knew that your husband made a baby with this. I know you did that. So this is not the first time that a group of women are being made to carry children out of the
Right.
result of rape.
That's one of the clips. I'm not sure if you were backstage yet, but I'm sorry to cut you off, but there was a point where they were bringing up, and actually, I should have left that stream up. Hold on a second, I'll bring it back up for a second because there was and I put the video in the comments for those that are wondering. It is a Vox webisode about 9 minutes, and it says the U.S. medical system is still haunted by slavery, and it basically all it talks about, yes, and it exactly what you were just describing. It talks about how Black women were used to breed a new generation of the enslaved for their profit and benefit, and that was at the risk of their death. They did not care. It was forced pregnancy and forced birth, but we don't want to talk about that, do we?
No. And you want me to tell you something else that angers me? Because as a woman, I'm pained when I see any woman go through anything. I don't never want to see a woman go through anything. That's me. I don't want to see another woman go through anything, even if it's not impacting me. And that's the difference.
Right.
That's the difference. White women in America have always been the headline when it comes to women's rights and women's suffrage, right? You have a whole women's suffrage movement, and all the leaders of that movement are white women, as if the entire time leading up to that suffrage movement, they weren't inflicting pain and suffering on groups of women. So I hate when people try to tell the plight of Black women through the eyes of white women. And this is, let me go on record as saying, I have not a dislike for white women, Asian women, Spanish women. I have not a dislike. What I have a dislike for is my story being told through your story. And then your story becomes the umbrella for everybody's story, because that ain't right. Now, when you look at even the women's suffrage movement, you have all these things happening before that. Like, I believe in like 1820, that's when all white men became enfranchised. So now it wasn't just rich white men, it's white males, no matter what your poverty level is. Like you are enfranchised. Welcome to the corporation of America. Right. Then you have the 14th, I think the 14th Amendment that designated citizens as males. You can write these down and come back and check me if I'm wrong. I'm open to criticism, right? But I know these little things. Then you have the 15th Amendment, I believe, that guaranteed Black men the right to vote. So when I see Black males, and they're always saying, we need our women to stand up for us. Let's be clear about a few things. You've had more wherewithal to do than we have had. You had a head start. You had a head start. I think people forget that the women were on the plantation fields with the Black men. We went through the same thing. Like, so why do you get the excuse of society is coming down on you? Society don't like you. Why do you get that excuse, but the Black woman don't get to have that? Why we don't get to have that? Why are we, of all people, expected to just keep fucking going? Why? Where is our, I don't even want to say excuse, but where is our relief for, oh, maybe she just don't want to get up today because she just don't want to get up today? Why? Why she can't find a job because society is against her? When Black males we done had 2 Black men sit on the Supreme Court. If you look at Fortune 500 companies, there have been Black males in these positions. Why is it? It's always a first Black male, right? And then you had the first Black. Why is it that we have to keep being the backbone for that, right? I don't like that. I don't like it because you had a head start. It's the white men, then the Black men, then the white woman, and then finally, okay, let's give the rights to the Black women with the voting right of 1965, I believe. You know what I'm saying? So even though we had all these bills and legislations and amendments and all this other stuff in front of us, saying that we're people, saying that we should have these rights, it's not till 1965. My mother was born in 1965. My mother. 1965? Like, really? So when I hear about Black women, I understand that you're upset about, oh, they're taking my right. We never had no rights to our babies, to our uteruses. We never really had it. It's always a control. Either the control is make the babies or the control is don't make the babies. That's the control. This is not about us. This is not about us. What I implore Black women to do is to be selective in who you choose to lay with, when you choose to lay with, how you choose to lay with, who you lay with. I implore Black women to put self first. I implore Black women to understand, and make yourself financially, mentally, physically, emotionally prepared for children. And I implore Black women that if you are in a situation where your body has been compromised and a baby is a result of that, that you seek immediate assistance to be able to eradicate that somewhere safe.
Yes.
You know, we need more Black female gynecologists,
Yes.
more Black female doctors.
Talk about the fact that historically we've always had our own doulas and midwives. Black and
Oh
indigenous
yeah,
folks
until
have
they decide
always
they want
had
to
that.
regulate it.
Right. And it was like the 1950s, 60s when we started getting our voting rights, quote unquote, our rights and all that shit. Excuse my language. But
Hmm.
around that time was when it was the corporate male takeover of gynecology.
Hmm. And now everything requires a license. Everything requires a class. Everything requires, all these things. Let's see who's doing this work.
So they
Right?
was
It's a
been
baby.
in our
It's a
bodies.
baby. You don't really need I don't need a certification to help my daughter push this baby out. All I need to do is know how to pull and cut. Right? But you want to put a price on that. You want to be able to
Right.
gain everything with the Black woman becomes profitable.
Yep.
Natural hair. Now you
Yeah.
want to regulate that. You don't need
Talk
to
about it.
regulate nothing that don't have chemicals. If I'm not putting chemicals in my hair, I don't need a certification to do my hair. I don't need a certification for somebody to do my hair if they're not chemically altering my hair. If I'm not chemically altering my body, if I'm not getting epidural, if I'm not getting anything to induce my labor, you don't have to regulate the person that's guiding me through me pushing this baby out of me, as long as I'm not being chemically or medically altered. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So we just have to be more responsible for us. Now, this is going to, like you said, these women are going to continue to fight for it, and eventually they'll get a resolve, and their resolve will be the resolve for all women, because that's how it always happens. That's how it always happens.
Unfortunately, that's how the cookie crumbles, and that part is what makes me feel hopeless and helpless in a sense, which I don't like feeling that way, because
Mhm.
at the end of the day, we're still going to be like sitting there with our hands folded, like, okay, y'all going to sit there and fight for everybody? Or is this just for y'all? Because 2 years ago, some of y'all said y'all was down, and then the other portion of y'all, just like we said here, voted for Trump.
Mhm.
So, well, why, what is the reason that we should ever believe you, especially now?
Yeah, the thing in my mind that troubles me the most is that I don't think people really understand how this operates, right? Or
Right,
else people wouldn't be as angry with the Supreme Court as they are.
right,
My reasoning for being angry with the Supreme Court is the fact that something that has been in place for 50 years has been undone, which means you can realistically go back and undo other things that
yes,
have been put in place. There's no precedent of when you can't undo something.
right,
That's my issue. However, realistically, maybe this should be a state issue. And then that puts more responsibility on the state. And that puts more responsibility on you as a citizen to do your research, to do your due diligence, and the people that you are putting into these spaces to represent you as a state. At the state level is when you have the most direct impact, I believe, as a citizen. Once it gets to that federal level, all right, we dwindling off. We all see that with the presidential elections. The state elections and local elections, I feel, are taken for granted. We want to vote for our cousin. We want to vote for our uncle. We want to vote for Susie's uncle, just because you're voting for people because you know them and you went to school with them, instead of voting for people because of what they're saying or what they're doing
what
or
they
what their
stand for.
stances are on certain issues, right? Now, this makes it because you know the people that you voted into these state positions ain't shit. Now you want to leave it up to the Supreme Court to regulate this, and the Supreme Court is saying no. You be responsible for you be responsible for this. That's basically what they're saying. So it's not like abortion has just been made illegal all over the United States of America, right? And I think I said this when we spoke last time.
But I will go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna ask, like, okay, so what about states like, and I know you wasn't here, and I want to put you on to Michelle Goodwin, because she puts it in a nice way. Like, for example, I believe it's Mississippi, and the amount of disproportional rates that this will affect Black women.
Mm-hmm.
Shit, I forget I lost my train of thought here. It was based off of something you were saying, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, maybe I'll say it again. It'll come up.
Right.
I said before you said that. I said gives more onus on the
Oh,
state.
right. So what about poor women in Mississippi that are miles and miles and miles and miles and miles, like hundreds of miles, literally, from the nearest place that they can get to get an abortion, and they don't have the money to get anywhere because there isn't even a job for them to even have, and they're raped
Mhm.
by their dad. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, that's the people that I'm thinking of, the black women, because let's face it, the majority of black people in our country are located in the deep south, where slaves, the African American enslaved peoples are traditionally, um, were born and bred as far as American history goes, right? So
Mhm.
the majority of those people are there, and they're still isolated, and they're still largely poor, to the point where a lot of them don't have any money. There's no means of any income. There are also still a lot of sharecropping going on. There's still people that are still their ancestors. They're still on the same plane, land that their ancestors. You know where I'm going. So like,
Mhm.
I think about those people that really can't afford to. That's why I have an issue with the whole states thing. Otherwise, I definitely see where you're coming from. It just frustrates me that, like, I really want, and this is where a lot of my, like, fighting for activism, I think, comes from, is thinking about a lot of the poor black and poor, like, brown disenfranchised people that are in those really isolated pockets of America that don't get news, like even just what we're talking about right now, to really have that sense of, like, understanding and community and perspective and all of the above, but also have a means to be able to let people know what's going on to them, or how their lives are affected, or what they lack and what they need, you know what I mean, or what actually happens to them. Because we're spitting out scenarios, but I really can't imagine. I can imagine how worse the scenarios probably are than we would ever fathom, because we just don't know the intricacies of what's going on in, like, rural deep south black America,
So
um,
here's the thing. Here's the
yeah.
thing. What's going on right now in rural, deep South Black America is going to continue to go on exactly as it's been going on, whether the Supreme Court overturn this or not. Those same women that don't have access to get to where they need to get to didn't have it before this happened.
Talk
And
about
and unfortunately, it's going to be worse for them now. But this is where community comes in. And this is what I was talking about the last time we were with one another. We had an opportunity to be separate, right? We had an opportunity to put forth for ourselves the ability to be separate with equality, right? And we did not want that. So as a result of not wanting that, everything that we get by way of right, virtue, liberty, justice is under a system that was developed without us in mind. So this is the result of that. So when we have this type of a structure that's set up, then you have to become the structure. I always say us, we have to be the group that says, okay, we know that there are women that are going to be adversely impacted by this, because they're always adversely impacted. They have always been adversely impacted. Don't just shine a spotlight on them now to push this agenda, because I feel like that's what people are doing now. Now, because it is impacting the big umbrella. Now the big umbrella wants to shine. Well, what's going to happen to them down there? What has been happening to them is going to continue to happen to them.
Right.
Don't use them to push your agenda. Find a different way to push your agenda. Find a different way.
Right.
Stop using poor black women, poor non black, non-Hispanic black women. Stop using poor white women. Stop using poor people to push agendas when they hit rich folks. That's what I don't like, because the poor people, they deal with these issues with or without overturning in the Supreme Court. You know what I'm saying? What you are describing to me about how you feel about dumb women not having access, you should have been angry about it, because they have never had the access. And that is the issue. Things only become a big spotlight when, like I said,
Right.
the overall umbrella is caving in and now everybody's getting wet with the rain. But you don't care when it's raining on these people. You don't go take your umbrella down there. You know, Planned Parenthood can open everywhere else. You don't open down there in these areas where it's needed. You know what I'm saying? You want to be up in New York and Manhattan and all these places. Like, we know everybody think that these places are concentrated in poverty, and they are not. They're not. They're not. They are not. As you just said, the people that need access to them don't have the real access to them. And then those who do and are on a lower spectrum of insurance and stuff, when you go in, you're treated as if you're going in to commit a murder.
Right.
So, you know, it's a give and take. But my thing is, the community needs to say, okay, we know that our women are being raped. We know our women are being mistreated. Why isn't there a fund set up? Why isn't there a fund set up? A fund set up specifically for women, Black women who need medical assistance. You don't have to label what the medical assistance is. But why isn't there somewhere that women can come to and say, listen, I'm in need of this. I need a ride here. I need a plane here. I need this. The same way these jobs started jump. Oh, we'll pay for it. Yeah, because you don't want your workforce out. Of course you want to pay for it. Of course you are. Because you don't want people taking 6-month leave of absence and 12-week leave of absence. So yeah, you're going to do what you need to do. Everything has a reason behind it. We have to stop thinking that people, oh, that's such a good gesture. No, the fuck it's not. No, it's not. Because if you're willing to pay for that, there's a mother that can't get to work every day because her child don't have daycare. You can pay for that shit too.
Talk about it.
So I'm so angry about this situation because people are looking at it so simply. Like, it's just so simplistic. Let's just go march. No, sit your ass down and figure out what the issue is. The real issue. Not that you just want to put blame on somebody over time. What is the real issue? The real issue is you didn't give a fuck then, and now it's coming to bite you. That's the issue. So figure out how you can start giving a fuck going forward so that it don't keep coming to bite you. And if it don't bite you, then maybe we won't get bit as hard, because we're still going to get bit. But maybe it won't be as hard. Maybe the teeth will be filed down a little bit. Maybe they'll have a little coat over top of them or something, so we won't have imprints left in our arms. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yo, take a breath real quick. But everything you're saying, I'm feeling, and all of that. Like, I'm not gonna mansplain you. Like, all of that. For
It's
a person
just crazy.
Go ahead.
It's crazy. I literally took my LinkedIn off of my phone because I couldn't believe the way professional people were speaking about this topic. You're supposed to be a professional. And this is what you're saying about this topic. If I see one more man use a condom, you don't have the option to use a condom if your ass is being raped. You don't have that option. You don't have that option. People just saying stuff because it's what they want to say instead of just sitting and really thinking, really thinking about, okay, so it's your religion. I keep hearing religion this. I can tell you, I have never been more proud to be a Muslim woman than I am in this moment.
Talk about it.
Than I am in this very moment right here. Because, there is no compulsion in Islam. My favorite quote out of the Quran, my favorite line is, Lakum dinukum waliya din. It just means to you be your way and to me be mine. As long as you're not doing nothing to hurt me, I don't care which way you want to live your life. Go live it and be happy. But the minute you come over here trying to regulate or harm me, that's when we're going to have a problem. Nice. That's when we're going to have a problem. If people stop and use religion for the moral compass that it's supposed to be, or just the guiding beacon of what it's supposed to be, and stop taking everything at face value. And I know some people are going to get angry about this statement, but I really don't care, because at this point, we are all not working from a level of common sense. And we all just need to get on some common sense level, right? Yes. Every religion has a piece of it that can be looked at as, okay, this is a little exaggerated. If you can't find a part of your religion teaching that say, okay, this part might didn't happen. This right here, this probably didn't happen, but I'm gonna put that to the side and I'm gonna take the parts that work. For me, I like to go through all three of the major religions and take out the things that are the same. The Exodus, the Ten Commandments, the story of Jesus, although it may be screwed or told differently in each religion, he exists in each religion. I like to take the things that keep us in common, right? And I like to work from those spaces where other people like to take everything that's different and forget the things that they have in common and just run with those, right? And at the heart of everything is to be good to other people. That's supposed to be the heart of everything, to be good to other people. And you're not being good to somebody when you telling them that they have to carry a baby that's the product of a violent attack against them, right? That's not a good way of being. You're not being a good person nor a good Christian when you're sitting here judging somebody. Leave the judgment to God. Because every time you walk out your door and you decide to go judge somebody, honey, that judgment is going to be placed on you as well when the day of judgment comes. You can't be walking around here like you God. You can't tell somebody they're going to hell. You can't tell nobody what their end result is going to be because you're not God. You know what I'm saying? So that sickened me to see that on a professional platform where people are up here looking for jobs. But then again, it's a good thing because then you see how the CEO of this company thinks or the people at this company think. And maybe you say, well, you know what? Maybe I don't need to go over there. So really they hurting their self. Religion is religion in this country. America needs to just come out and say that they're a Christian country. That's what they need to do because it would be more acceptable. It would be easier to swallow. If I go to a country and they practice Sharia law, I know going in there what to expect, right? Because the country has said this is an Islamic country, right? When you come to America, you come here with the pretense that this is not a religious country, but this is a religious country, and the religion of choice is Christianity.
Indeed. Unfortunately.
I don't know where we're going, but I do know that people have to.
Well, speaking of where we're going, I'll give you 5 minutes to really wrap this up and encapsulate not only what this episode was about, but where you think we're going, given not just this Supreme Court ruling, Dobbs versus Jackson, but all of the other Supreme Court rulings, all of the shootings that just happened, Jalen Walker and Dante Perez Jones, and what happened to them as Black men still getting lynched in modern society, all of that today with white supremacists still gunning people down, and the Supreme Court ruling that says that men can carry guns, and you know what that means. It's code for white men can carry guns wherever they want to. So we just had a shooting that may or may not have still been a false flag right in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and one that really was a shooting, and we still don't even know who did that right in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So we need to know, what is clear is that white men are going to show up to any public place with guns, brandishing guns, and there's nothing we can do about it, and open fire. It's open season on people. It's probably going to be Black and brown people of some sort, non-Anglo-Saxon. What is going to happen? What do you think will transpire with all of that in scope?
This is sad because I don't know. You would think that, like in Chicago, I know that a young white male between the ages of 18 and 20 shot into a parade on the 4th of July. And I don't understand how so many mass killings can be conducted by, and there is a profile for the shooter, but that profile doesn't impact the race as a whole. You know what I'm saying? Everybody else in the race gets to keep their identity. But if a Black person does something, the race as a whole becomes the target. If a Hispanic person does something, the race as a whole becomes the target or the stereotype. When a white person does something, every other white person is able to wake up the next morning as an individual. No one is going to look at your son differently because they're a white male with black hair. Nobody's son woke up this morning and felt different because they woke up a white male with long black hair. You know what I'm saying? But little black boys and little black girls wake up every day feeling different because am I going to walk out my house and meet the description, right? And I feel like that fear needs to be transferred. You are fearing the wrong group of people. Sadly, as it is, we're hurting ourselves. You ain't got nothing to worry about when it comes to us. We are doing it to ourselves, so we need to fix us. But as far as society goes, you're fearing the wrong group of people. Facts. You are in fear of the wrong group of people. So what needs to happen is you need to transfer that fear where it needs to be at and fix it at the source. You need to fix it at the source. But you know what I say is the difference between these gun laws and this abortion? The guns are killing mostly who? Who? Young black urban people, poor white people, people that don't have no value to the masses, to the majority. You know, they're disposable. But these abortions now, I'm assuming, are being had by more white women. And so the population is decreasing for that race. And so now we need to fix this.
Correct.
But we don't need to fix the guns yet because enough of us ain't been killed by the guns. So let's not, we don't have to do anything with that just yet. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
That's how I look at this. I cannot even understand how you have a specific profile for shooters that are killing not 4, not 5. You're killing 6, 10, 11, 12 people at a time. And y'all still just get to wake up free. Like that. I'm not worried. I'm not worried about getting trampled in the street because I look like somebody. How are you not? Let me have some of that.
But yo, Tasliym, first of 7, it's always a pleasure. Like you're just amazing, and we gotta wrap this up. But I'm gonna rap to you some more. I just want to end with this clip real quick because it touched on something you was talking.
Okay.
Say, why do you burn down the community? Why do you burn down your own neighborhood? It's not ours. We don't own anything. Trevor Noah said it so beautifully last night. There's a social contract that we all have, that if you steal or if I steal, then the person who is the authority comes in and they fix the situation. But the person who fixes the situation is killing us. So the social contract is broken. And if the social contract is broken, why the fuck do I give a shit about burning the Football Hall of Fame, about burning the Target? You broke the contract when you killed us in the streets and didn't give up. You broke the contract when for 400 years we played your game and built your wealth. You broke the contract when we built our wealth again on our own, by our bootstraps in Tulsa, and you dropped bombs on us. When we built it in Rosewood and you came in and you slaughtered us. You broke the contract. So